Hey, fellow action figure collectors, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. My name is Toy Guru Netilich, a collector and a toy industry veteran, and I want to talk today about how it is that our collections sometimes just can't seem to get complete. And not in the sense of wanting, more in the same line, but those brands or those characters that for some reason just can't get made. What are the reasons why a specific missing piece in a collection or a brand that's never been made as a toy before just seems to elude us? I mean, it tends to be the difference between being a super happy collector with everything they want to being a sad panda. And I hate being a sad panda. What is it about these missing pieces and the struggles we go through as collectors, contacting companies, asking them to make it, and year after year, we just don't see wish lists being fulfilled. For a lot of us, we'll turn to things like toy books because they may have images of all of the figures we don't have, but it still doesn't quite replace the actual toy in our collection. So, as great as these are, they're not always a solution. And as I said, I am a collector too. I'm a lifelong collector, or at least, once I stopped playing with toys and just started collecting them. And I have my personal wish list too. So I'm going to use those as examples to illustrate different reasons why the industry has trouble delivering figures. All right, so at my desk at work, which is in my home office, I'm blessed to be able to work from home, I keep a journal or a diary or a book.
This book contained a map.
And no, there's no maps in this book. Well, actually, no, there are some maps in this book. But there are also a lot of lists. Not only do I log all of the figures that I buy, because yes, I'm obsessive compulsive that way, but for years, for decades, I have been keeping different lists of wanted figures in lines that I collect. Things like Marvel Legends and Star Wars 3 and 3/4. I have noted figures that I personally want, and as they come out, I cross them off the list. So, what I want to do is, using my personal wish list, illustrate to viewers out there in YouTube land. Didn't know you lived in YouTube land, did you? Well, you do! I wonder what the zip code of YouTube land is. I bet it's like zeros and ones. All right, so first off, let's talk about the figure that I'm always whining about in Marvel Legends. The Spot, the Marvel Legends Spider, or the Marvel Spider-Man villain. The reason that I like this guy so much is this was my very first Spider-Man comic. Not my first comic, but my first Spider-Man comic. And the visual of the Spot being able to come out of, dimensions like that, his little circles, just really called to me as a kid. We have had one Spot action figure in a 10-inch line in the 90s, but he was a repaint of Spider-Man. Check out the web-slinging hand for that. So there's a lot of ways he could be really, really cool as a Marvel Legends figure, whether he's, poking his hands through his little, spot dimension portals or coming through walls. There's been a couple different takes of him visually. Sometimes his spots are perfectly round, sometimes they're ink blots, kind of like Rorschach. Either way, whether you love Spot or not, he, I think, would make a great addition to Marvel Legends, especially because we don't really get that many black and white figures. Now, while I don't want the modern version with, just one spot over his head, this is the one that my, shall we say, spy network has told me has already been sculpted. In fact, Spider-Man's hand is coming out of his chest. I assume it's removable, but until they actually reveal this figure, we won't know. This is the version I really want, classic Spot, and I'm hoping they do that with a head swap if they chose to go with the all-black spot on his face if he ever gets released. But if he's already been sculpted, why hasn't he been released? And, there's nothing worse for a collector than to get a long-time figure that's just not quite the version you want. So the reason he hasn't been released is because of paint. So you might say, well, wait a minute, he only has, black circles on a white body. That's not that much paint. Well, yes, true, it's only one color, but this was something I learned the hard way with Ratlore from the Masters of the Universe Classics line. I thought that the stripes on his arms and legs could be done with one paint op going up and down the leg. Well, it turned out the only way to do that was to paint each scale individually. Every single time a paintbrush touches a toy, it costs money. So if you can do the stripe as one, paint op, that costs a penny. usually. I mean, more or less. But if you have to paint every single scale, every time you touch the scale with that paintbrush, you get charged a penny by the vendor. And it adds up very quickly, especially when you have someone like Ratlore that has a lot of scales. So that's why there's been certain characters that have been very difficult to bring to market in superhero lines. Ragman is a great example. We tried to do him in DC Universe for a long time, but it was just so expensive to paint all of that detail on his outfit. The same with Zebra Stripe Batman. A prototype fully painted sat on Bill Benecke's desk for years, and Mattel finally got it out as a San Diego Comic-Con figure only because they were able to charge a premium. He would have never worked from a cost perspective in the main retail line because every stripe had to be painted, and that just made it so expensive. And that's exactly like Stripe. It's based, or Spot, excuse me, Stripe. So that's why. Too expensive to make. All right. For our next example, let's travel to Yavin 4. I am a huge fan of Star Wars, in particular in all of the movies. One of my favorite scenes is the Battle of Yavin. I love getting action figures from this battle. I love having the rebel pilots. I love having all the generals. And there's one general in particular that I really like. This guy. His name is Bob Hutzel. In Decipher, he didn't even get his own card. He was just called Rebel Commander. But, man, he just speaks to me. And he's shown up in a couple of the scenes in Yavin in the war room, and he's there actually in the last shot of the entire movie, right between the droids. So you notice him, right? I mean, come on. C-3PO, Bob Hutzel, R2-D2. So why have we never gotten an action figure of this character in the final shot of the film, right between the droids? Well, I mean, other than the fact that he's, like a bald, white, old dude in a jacket, not too excited. I mean, his name is Bob. How many Bobs do we have in the Star Wars universe, really? I mean, other than Bob the Jawa, my personal Jawa. Plus, he's got mutton chops. I mean, there is a serious lack of action figures with mutton chops out there. And we need more of them. And I think we need to get together as a fan base and demand more toys with more mutton chops for more collectors. All right, so we've obviously had Rebel Generals done. It's not, like this is an area of Star Wars that's been untouched. So why is it that we can get General Dodonna, who has a full beard, but mutton chops are off the table? Is it, an anti-mustache hair thing? Well, no. It's kind of related to the whole Tonica sisters thing. If you're unfamiliar, they never signed a likeness rights, which is why even campaigns to make them, unfortunately, won't go forward, because Lucasfilm just doesn't have that. It's more like the Tom Cruise issue, where he refuses to be an action figure, and his figures need to get pulled from shelves sometimes. So the actor that played Bob Hutzel, who is John William Alt, who apparently has mutton chops in every single role he ever plays. Can't say I've actually ever seen any of his other movies, but he's had quite a few, and I don't think many of them have been as toyetic as Star Wars. But he specifically said he does not want an action figure of him. It's actually written into his contract. And unfortunately, he passed in 2009, but I have a feeling his heirs are not going to violate his wishes. So because of his refusal or wish to not be a figure. All right, so as those of you who follow this channel know, I've taken a lot of those piles on the internet. And one of the things I take the most is my outright love for Hudson Hawk. I have been very vocal about that in a few videos, and I've gotten a lot of piles of that stuff without swearing in a video. And yeah, what is it that I love so much about this movie? If you've never seen it, I mean, it's kind of like the Da Vinci Code, but a little wacky. And there's been a little merchandise, a video game, and there is an Assassin's Creed Da Vinci Flyer, which I unofficially count as a Hudson Hawk toy, although I'm probably the only one on the planet who does that. So with this movie achieving cult status, and I know I'm not the only one who likes it, why is it that we cannot get a Hudson Hawk action figure line, or even just a figure of him? And I will tell you, this is the only movie that my wife ever turned off while we were watching a movie together and refused to finish. So for those of you who don't like it, my wife is an ally of yours. Okay, so despite the action, despite the all-star power of Bruce Willis, no Hudson Hawk figures for me. And the reason is, well, while I may be very passionate about this movie, along with 5 other people, there's not enough of us. And that's really the thing with a lot of properties, that we're really, really passionate about something. Funko does a great job about this. They believe, everyone's a fan of something. But when you have a very small audience in an empty theater or an empty stadium, Well, it's just not enough people. And while we're very passionate and we may love something with all our heart, in the toy industry you have minimum order quantities and you can't hit that when you don't have enough fans. So unfortunately, something like Hudson Hawk, although it is odd because we have gotten action figures of even more obscure stuff. I mean, you know, 1930s silent films from Germany have had figures. Yet at the same time, something like The Princess Bride, that you would think would be a runaway action figure hit with so many fans, well, when there have been toys of Princess Bride, they've actually dramatically underperformed. NECA did Dread Pirate Roberts, who's probably the most toyetic of any of the characters, the most action-oriented version of a character, and this one didn't sell well enough for us to get Fezzik. So that basically kind of shows how small audiences can be. We may love movies, but at the end of the day, if there's not enough people, it's going to bar your favorite film from getting the action figure treatment. So sorry, Hudson Hawk, you'll always be swinging on a star for me. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and it was a good look at certain reasons why figures that we really love and get a lot of attention online, or not any attention, just have trouble getting action figures made of them. Leave your comments below. I always comment back. Let me know what figures you'd like to see that just struggle to become a reality. Love to discuss it, and I'll see you in the comment section.